is not what you know, it's what you can prove.
You know how to cut to the core of me, Baxter. You're so wise. You're like a miniature Buddha, covered in hair.
I want to become a guru so girls will like me. Then I will like myself.
Now, before we do this, let's go over the ground rules. Rule number 1. No touching of the hair or face.
Of course.
And that's it! Now let's do this!
Are you not entertained? Are you not entertained? Is this not why you are here?
What's up, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Golf Guru Show. This is episode 135. I am your host, Jason Sutton, Director of Instruction at the beautiful Colleton River Club in Bluffton, South Carolina, where it is my mission to break down high performers in the teaching and coaching business, as well as all fields of study. Make sure that you download this episode and hit that purple subscribe button so you don't miss any future episodes that will be coming your way. And all I ask is that you share the podcast on social. I am very excited about my next guest, as he has been one of the most requested guests in the last year, so we finally found the time with our busy schedules to get him on the show. I'm talking about none other than my good friend and PGA Tour coach, Mr. Jeff Smith. You can follow Jeff on Twitter and on the gram at Radar Golf Pro. And Jeff is, a couple things about Jeff. Jeff is the Director of Instruction at Spring Creek Ranch in Memphis, Tennessee, but he is most well known for his work on the PGA Tour with clients like Viktor Hovland, Aaron Wise, and Davis Riley, just to name a few. Jeff is one of the coaches that I really respect for the work that he's done, because he's done it the right way and he's got there through just plain old hard work and acquiring the information and spending time with the best coaches in order to get better. In this conversation, we discuss what he's learned from guys like Joseph Mayo and Grant Waite, to an in-depth look into what he's working on with his players on tour. So I will avoid a long intro and get into this awesome conversation with my friend, Mr. Jeff Smith. Enjoy. So Jeff Smith, welcome to the show, man. I think, we've been trying to do this for a while and finally tracked you down. You may be the busiest guy out on tour. So I appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me. It's been way too long.
It has been way too long. I can't remember the last time we saw each other. I feel like why do we not hang out more? And I know we're running in different circles now, but hopefully we can catch up soon. You've had such an interesting journey, and I know a lot of if anybody's listened to any of your other podcasts or heard your story, it's pretty interesting as far as coming up from not as much a playing or teaching background, more of a retail background, and then getting into what now is an elite company. So we'll skip ahead a little bit. We'll save everybody the long story. But I'm just so in awe of what you've done with your career and your success. So congrats on all of that.
Yeah, man. Thank you. Appreciate it.
So if we start with sort of when you went, I guess, for your probably first big teaching job was at TPC Summerlin with Joe, right?
Yeah. So probably I was at a club before that in Vegas called Sienna Golf Club for about a year as kind of a stopgap between an indoor academy that Joe and I had in Vegas, and then there was a 1 year gap where I was at Sienna, and then we made the move to TPC Summerlin. So,
gotcha.
And then we were there for quite a long time.
Yeah. So, I mean, it sounds like that's where you sort of started cutting your teeth on all the stuff that we're talking every day about, from teacher to teacher, which I'm excited to get into with you. You have been probably one of the most requested guests on my show, just so you know, from a lot of the young coaches. Is like, when are you going to have Jeff on? You guys are going to chop it up with some cool biomechanics stuff and forces and torques and, all the buzzwords that we're hearing. But sort of take us from you're at a new location now, and we're chatting a little bit off air there. So how do you go from Summerlin to where you are now, and sort of what you're doing today?
Yeah, so I'm from Tennessee originally, born and raised, and when I got out of school, I moved all the way across the country to Southern California, and so that's kind of where I started in the golf industry, and then from California I moved to Vegas, and that's how I landed in Vegas. But when I would come back to Tennessee, I would teach at some great properties here, TPC Southwind, places in Nashville, and then there was a place here in Memphis called Spring Creek Ranch where I had a few clients, and I knew it was an incredible property, and an opportunity opened up. A new ownership group bought the property, and then they were looking for somebody to come in and help them build something special here, and kicked it around with my wife and family, and they had been putting pressure on me to move out of Vegas for a long time before this opportunity came up. But I kind of loved Vegas. I was probably the only one in the family that wanted to stay there. So, it's a dream for a golf coach to live in Vegas, to play poker, to have fun, entertainment. You can travel out of there easy. So, I was the only one that wanted to stay, but it was great to have an opportunity to come back here, be closer to family, and then the facility that I'm at is just second to none. And the ownership group loves us; they want us there, and so we're trying to build something special there. Yeah.
So you've got some coaches that are working for you, because I know you're on the road a lot with your PGA Tour guys, and it looks like from Instagram you have a fantastic facility. And you also do a little fishing there. We'll get into as well, the passion that we share. So yeah, talk about the structure there, is like how you make it all work.
Yeah, so we, for the longest time, there's been a guy that's kind of spearheaded the academy. His name is Scott Felix, and he's one of the probably top club fitters in the country. He's top 100 in everything club fitting, and so. He was the one that sort of initially reached out to me to come to Spring Creek, and a good friend of mine who I coached when he was playing, that had turned instructor. His name was Jonathan Fly, and I worked with him and his father both as their coach. And when he segued into teaching, I really kind of took a liking to him and wanted to help him grow as a coach, and he's become an awesome instructor. So he's kind of my right-hand man in Memphis. And then I also have another business partner. I run basically a junior golf coaching / placement service academy.
Oh, wow.
And
didn't know that part.
Yeah, so that's we've celebrated about a year with that going on right now, and we have 18 kids in the program, and it's myself and TD Luton, who you probably know him. He's
I know him very well.
North Carolina guy.
Yeah,
he was the assistant
Duke
coach
boy.
at Duke. Yeah,
there you
Duke
go.
For a long time, and so that's how our relationship was formed. I worked with a bunch of players at Duke, and so
That's
TD's
right.
coaching full time now, and great player, good, has a lot of coaching experience. So it's just kind of a perfect fit for what we wanted to do there. So those two guys are my main, right hand guys, and so anybody that I can't get to schedule wise, I try to get them to those guys, because I know they're going to get great information and good coaching.
Yeah, I'd seen TD posting that on Facebook and Instagram, and didn't realize you were involved in that. That's so cool. Yeah, such a need. As you know, as you've brought up a lot of juniors and coached them into college, it's such an important part now, especially with the transfer portal and right. There's a lot of stuff going on in the junior golf ranks that people don't realize, and they need help. Right, parents don't know. So good for you for doing that. I don't know how you have time to do that, but
thankfully TD carries a lot of the weight there. Good. And then I also have a guy sort of behind the scenes that's doing all the logistics work, leg work there. But, it's something I wanted to do for a long time. I just didn't have the right people in place to do it, because I knew that my time was going to be I'd have time to do the coaching part, but not necessarily all the other stuff that comes with it. And there is a lot that comes with that process. Sort of navigating that recruiting process is tricky as as a junior golfer. So we're trying to make it as easy as possible for these kids.
Yeah, for sure. Are you still doing the Course Kings online stuff? How's that going?
Yeah. So it's, man, I want to say this is 4 years now.
Yeah, that's about right.
Going.
Yep.
And it's great. There's so much content on there now that at times I worry about, man, are people going to be able to get through all this? Are they going to be able to navigate it? And so we've kind of tried to streamline it a little bit. But what I found, Jason, was I started it because I couldn't teach all the people that were reaching out to me. And it was just like, they're all over the world. They want to come to Vegas or whatever and get a lesson. And I'm just like, I can only stand on the range 10 hours a day. There's not enough to go around. So I thought, well, if I could sort of create some content that was, sort of my philosophical approach to each part of the game and put a library together that, people might join it as a membership and it'd be like kind of taking a lesson from me. And so we have just under 1,000 members, and I'd say, man, it seems like most of them are coaches because we get, that's because I get messages all the time on Instagram or Facebook, from coaches saying, "Hey, appreciate this video. It made a lot of sense, whatever." So it's been great. It's been educational for other coaches, and it's been an opportunity to kind of reach people that are far away.
Yeah, I think that's the thing is with now being more online. I know we went through a whole thing with COVID and hopefully moving out of that a little bit. I was doing the Swing U and a lot of that, online as well. It's like more of the coaches are hungry for that even than the players, right? It's just like, that's why I keep getting DMs, and a lot of my friends are like, when are you going to have Jeff on? Because they're all a member of your site, and they're like, hey, just you get so much out of it's like the next best thing to watching you teach is listening to you break down a swing or do a swing analysis on a player, right? You can learn so much. And I learned a lot about that when I was coming up through the ranks. So let's backtrack a little bit to early in your career and like some of your mentors, right? So I know you mentioned Joe Mago, that you've coached with, Grant Waite. Talk a little bit about sort of what they've done for you and like what you learned from those guys, and anybody else you can recommend out there, and then we'll kind of get into some good players stuff. I promise.
I mean, I don't know how long this podcast is supposed to go on, but this might be a lengthy segment here.
Dude, 4 or 5 hours will be okay. Trust me. We can break it up into 3 parts. It's okay. Mine's the longest.
Yeah. So I'll start with Joe. So Joe, and a lot of people don't know, but we grew up together. I've known him since I was 15 years old. We lived probably 100 yards from each other. And so at a very early age, I was playing, high school golf, junior golf or whatever. Joe was more of a basketball player, baseball player in high school, good athlete. And so golf was something that baffled us both, and we were trying to figure it out. And we were kind of a sounding board for each other. Like, I don't know, I would read this book and I'd be like, dude, let me tell you about this new thing I learned. And then he'd be like, oh, wait a minute, I just watched this video. Let me tell you about this new thing that I learned. And so, I mean, there was a lot of getting in the backyard, hitting balls into, across the neighborhood, into nets. I mean, when I say we dabbled in everything, I mean, we dabbled in everything.
Yeah.
I'll never forget this. One day I go over to Joe's house, and Joe has got like 8 golf balls lined up in a row on a tee. And he has a 6-iron in his hand, and he comes hopping up to these golf balls on one leg. And he starts swinging and hitting these balls and just smoking them off of one leg. And I'm like, what the hell are you doing? And he's like, dude, I got to tell you about this. I just went to Arkansas. I just spent like 2 days with David Lee and Gravity Golf. I'm like, this dude's lost his mind. Like, I've never seen any shit like this. And so, that was the curiosity back in those days were the thing that drove, I would say, me and him both to try to go see as many people, go take in as much information as you could. I would say 10 years ago, roughly around that time, the PGA show was the big deal.
Right.
Like,
Yep.
that's where all the brains kind of came together.
That's where we met.
And and you would hear ideas from other coaches. You would hear other philosophical approaches. And so that was kind of a melting pot for me of like getting in there and rubbing elbows with all these different people, whether it was listening to David Orr talk about putting, or whether it was, Mike Bennett and Andy Plummer talking about stack and tilt, or whatever. There was just a lot of people sharing information at that time, and if you had your ears on, you could pick up a lot of information,
yeah.
and you could really learn to get good quickly at this. And so, so those are a bunch of people. Those people that were putting on those seminars, people presenting information at those seminars, were having a huge influence on me at the time. And then Joe and I kind of met Grant Waite. And Grant came out to Vegas and did a golf school with us. And this was right about the time TrackMan was coming out. Not very many people had one, and we had one in our indoor place. This giant suitcase thing.
It's huge.
Just unbelievable to think about what a TrackMan looks like now versus then.
Yeah.
And so Grant came out, and he was kind of fascinated with ball flight. There was a lot of mystery around what was actually happening with that collision model and what actually makes the ball fly the way that it does. And so that was all the craze on Twitter. Back then, there was no Instagram back then. It was Twitter.
Oh, yeah. Twitter was hot.
People were just dog cussing each other and your shit's wrong and blah, blah, blah.
Oh, my gosh.
It was the Wild Wild West,
oh, yeah.
Back then. But, hey, I learned a lot. I really did. But fast forward, Grant gave Joe and I really our first opportunities on the PGA Tour. Grant was transitioning out of coaching out of playing and into coaching,
mm-hmm.
and he had a huge stable of players at the time. And he gave us our first start. He gave us exposure to those players. He asked us to help in some of the tournaments. So, he's probably the person responsible for my PGA Tour coaching career, to be honest. And then from there, it got very sciencey for me.
Right.
A lot of PhD level, presenters, a lot of biomechanics seminars, a lot of research and measuring and 3D and trial and error, and spending time with guys like Sasho or Dr. Kwan
mm-hmm.
or Phil Cheatham. There's just a whole bunch of guys who kind of contributed to the sciencey part of golf instruction today. And nobody has it figured out. It's still evolving, and there's technologies coming out right now, still getting better and better, that are going to probably shape the next 10 years of golf instruction. And I'm strapped in, ready for it.
Yeah, we kind of came up through the same ranks, I think, and that, like, Sasha's obviously been a huge influence on me, and Quan, and I remember those days where you get home from work and you just get on Twitter and just argue with people, or you just watch people argue with people.
Back then it wasn't about helping golfers at all. It was about, I'm right and I know my shit and you don't. And
exactly.
Like, it wasn't. The golfers weren't getting any information. We were using terms that we didn't even understand.
Exactly. Everybody trying to be smart, or trying to act smart. That's awesome. Yeah. So Grant, I should definitely have him on the show, because we've talked, and it's just like he's almost like the old, not like he's Mac O'Grady, but he's had such a touch, as far as the people he's influenced in our business. Did you do any Mac schools? I know you watched him. I know you watched him teach some, but I didn't know if you did, like, where you were getting immersed into the program and get kicked out.
Yeah, so I was out before I ever got a chance to get in. To be honest with you, some of the coaches and coaches that I was learning from had already been booted, and my reputation had already kind of gotten back to Mac, because I reached out to him about going to a school, and he knew I was associated with Grant. That was a no go. He knew I was associated with Joe. Joe never did a school with him or anything, but he was out.
Yeah.
Just because of his presence on social media and TrackMan and understanding all that. So, no, but I spent a lot of time around amazing coaches like Dana Dahlquist. And,
there you go.
A guy like Teague Balin. I mean, Teague might be the most knowledgeable golf mind I've ever been around. And he's done it all, kind of absorbed it all. And then Mario Bevilacqua, who I taught with a long time at Summerlin. So Mario spent time with Mac. So I really spent a lot of time with guys who spent a lot of time with Mac. So by osmosis, I probably absorbed a lot of the terminology, a lot of sort of Mac's geometrical preferences in the golf swing. Obviously, having an appreciation for how he swung the club and how he could do it both right and left-handed. So, I think he deserves a tremendous amount of credit for like where golf instruction has landed.
Yeah, it's unbelievable the influence he's had, good or bad. I mean, it's just like right. Yeah, his name comes. I never went to a school. I know TJ tried to get me to go, and Doc tried to get me to go a couple of times, and I just didn't have the time or the money probably at that point. But I've got the white papers, I've got all the CPCF stuff. It's just like unbelievable with very limited technology, right? I mean, imagine. I'd love to see him come out of hiding and like, all right, let's get on 3D and TrackMan and let's figure some stuff out. But
there's no question about it. You think about, I say all the time, man, I wish I could go back in time and like put Sam Snead on 3D.
Yeah.
Look at his pressure stuff.
Yeah.
Look at his his tilts and things of that nature.
You can now with Sportsbox. You can get I know you can get close.
For sure. And it'd be sick to do that with Mac. Even at his age today, you'd see some incredible stuff.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so let's get into some of your players, right? So I got so many questions. I got lots of topics here. It's like we're going to bounce around a lot. But what everybody wants to know, or what I want to know, this is me selfishly, is like, what are you doing with your players, right? So I'm always curious about like the first meeting. How you get with a guy, especially a tour level guy? What do you see at the beginning? What are their tendencies? What are their goals? And then what do you do with them, right? So let's start with your most, prominent guy right now, which is Viktor Hovland, right? And I've got a lot of questions because he's got such an unusual pattern, I would say, right? So tell us the story, or sort of take us behind the curtain of like how you guys met, and then what was that first meeting like, and then tell us a little bit about what his tendencies are when he gets off, and then what you guys work on.
Yeah. So I met Viktor through some mutual friends probably about a year before I actually started working with him. Viktor's an internet guy. He does his research. He spends time on Instagram and YouTube, and goes down all these rabbit holes. So he's aware of all the coaches that are out there and kind of their philosophical approach and things of that nature. But he went through a period, I would say, we've been together for 2 years. So about 3 years ago, he went through a period, this is probably right when he was turning pro, where he was kind of searching for a coach. And he went and saw a bunch of different coaches. He just kind of went down the roster of going to see what this guy has to say and going to see what this guy has to say. And so after kind of all that was done, he reached out to me and was like, hey, I want to come and spend some time with you. So I flew to Stillwater, and like our first session together was really me just kind of taking it in and digesting what he does and where he struggles.
So let's dig deeper into that for the coaches out there. Like what are the questions that you're asking? Because this is huge, right? For an interview process, whether it's a tour player or an average golfer, is like, what does that structure look like for you? And what are you looking to receive from that player as far as the information?
Yeah, so I generally will start with a lot of playing tendencies. What's your ball flight, your desired ball flight? What are you trying to do here? What's the objective? What kind of shots are you seeing on a consistent basis? What's the miss? Where's the contact miss? Can we hit it high enough? Can we hit it far enough? Like, where are you tending to struggle there? And so that's generally going. The answers to those questions is generally, when you're looking at the swing, is generally going to sort of put the pieces in order for you. And so for him specifically, when Victor played, his lead arm got too far out on the downswing, and he would cut across the golf ball and have too much left to right movement on his golf ball. So his path would get too far left. He would have his driver, he calls it slicey. He's slicing it right in the middle of the fairway, but it obviously he doesn't like that ball flight pattern, and he's losing a lot of speed and distance and things of that nature. And then it was also very difficult for him to get longer clubs off the ground. He would hit them very low, and so when he played, he had a shot. It was going to be a low cut.
He hit down on it a lot.
Yeah. He'd hit down on it a little bit, and then he, in an effort to combat that, he would start tilting back.
Yeah,
and so
a lot of right bend.
When he'd tilt back to try to hit it higher, the contact would go haywire. So he'd have kind of a little bit of a two-way miss going in there, and he knew that. Like, he knew the tilt back was the thing that was killing my contact, and he couldn't put together why the lead arm was shifting out. He didn't have like a total understanding of his pattern. And so that's where I started with every player. So before I tell them what I'm going to change, I tell them how they're producing what they're producing.
What was his path when you first saw him? How much left?
So with a driver, probably 4 or 5 left.
Oh, wow. That's a lot for a tour player.
Yeah, and he would struggle with spin. He'd have 27 to 2,800 spin on his driver. Like a club that was his nemesis would be a 3-wood off the ground. It would be low heel shots, and then when he hit it solid, it just wouldn't get up off the ground. So, those are the things where he's like, man, if you can just help me with this, help me get a little bit more neutral, help me hit it a little bit higher, help me hit it a little bit further. Victor, the first day I measured him with a driver, he's an amazing athlete.
Yeah.
And his ball speed was like 169 ball speed. And, he plays at about 180 now.
Right,
so
yeah.
he's able to put on...
Yeah, I got questions about speed later, but yeah, he's put on some speed.
He's been able to, his driver's way more optimized. He can hit it a lot further. He can hit every club higher, but he can also shape the ball both ways now. Whereas before, it was a very one-dimensional pattern. And he was really good at it. In college, he could just beat everybody with knowing where his miss is, knowing where the trouble is, and being very comfortable knowing where the ball was going to go. And so, most of the clients who come to me first and foremost for swing direction, for help with their swing. But I pride myself on spending a great deal of time trying to be more well-rounded as a coach, because I don't really think of myself as a swing instructor. I think of myself as a coach.
Yes.
If a guy comes to me, and so like that very first trip with Victor, we go out on the course and I'm watching him putt, and obviously I'm a proponent of aim point.
Yep, me too.
For a long time.
Yep.
And I'm watching him putt, and I'm like, this guy's got great speed. He knows how to move a golf ball. He hits it in the middle of the putter face every time. It goes where he's trying to make it go. But my God, he has no idea how to read a green. So 4 holes into this thing, I'm dropping balls down. I'm like, all right, you read this one, and I'm going to read it. And I'll put a tee down. I mean, we're like, I don't know, we're a foot apart, basically, on every read. And I'm talking about 10-footers here, not 30-footers.
Oh, God.
So I was like, all right, let's backtrack on this swing stuff for 1 second. We have an opportunity to get really good, really fast with your putter, because he's an elite mover of a golf ball, no matter how you're trying to do it. And so that was like a light switch where, he could go in there, he could feel the ground. I think he's the best green reader in the world, to be honest, right now.
Now you get him on aim point.
I will put his feet up against anybody. I mean, it is surgical. And so it's kind of like having the answers to the test when you're that good with your feet. There's going to be obviously some little minute adjustments and things of that nature, but my gosh, he's so close every single time with his feet that it's almost hard for him to have a bad putting round, if you know what I mean.
That's awesome.
So he went from 150th his rookie season to he finished inside the top 25 this year.
And that was with little stroke adjustment, mostly just screen reading and picture stuff?
Yeah. So it was green reading, and it was how we structure practice.
There you go.
The drills, on a day-to-day basis, that kind of stuff. Speed work, starting line work, just basic stuff like that. Not a lot of like mechanical stuff associated with his stroke. He's just really good at naturally moving a golf ball. Mm-hmm. So to kind of finish up that answer, I'm asking what are their tendencies when they're playing. I'm looking at their game holistically. I'm looking at the data and the stats if I have privy to that. And I'm like, okay, here's how your swing currently works. This is why you hit the shots that you hit. If you want to make a change, here's the investment. This is what it's going to take. And sometimes that return on investment isn't great enough. Like they'll want to do something and I'll tell them, man, that's a waste of time. We can go out here and spend 8 hours a day you hitting wedges, but you're going to get this much better because you're already pretty good at it.
Yeah.
I would rather us get over here and grind on our feet and learn how to be the best green reader in the world, Or, let's go spend those hours on our short game. That kind of thing. So that's kind of the answer to your question, I think.
Not completely. All right, we're going. No, you're not getting off that easy. This is not the way this podcast works. All right, so you go through Victor's swing, okay? Because we've all seen it, and I want you to use the terms of what you saw, right? And you kind of mentioned the leftward path, the hands getting out, and then how did you change that pattern? Like, what were you guys moving more towards a draw, or you said moving more towards neutral so you could kind of have an option? And then how did you do that?
So with Victor, his faulty move was in late backswing. His upper center would translate really far behind the ball. He would turn in forward flexion of the torso.
Yeah. Still seems to do that a lot.
Yeah, well, it's a little bit misleading. He has so much rotation of his spine that it looks like it's happening. But in 3D, it's not happening as much as it is. But
Gotcha.
The problem is if you're gonna have that translation off the ball, then you need to have some lateral motion to both the pelvis and the torso in late backswing and in transition. And he didn't have that. He moved off the ball and then he would spin open on his back foot. He would have a lot of right bend, a lot of flexion in that trail knee, and he would really get open. And so I'm like, Victor, your left arm's shifting out because you don't have any lateral motion. If we look at your pressure trace here, it's not moving from your right heel to the ball of your left foot. It's moving from your right heel snapped into your left heel. It's a very rotary type of pattern.
Yeah.
And that was a way that he felt like he generated speed. But he really didn't. He didn't hit it that far.
Yeah, when you're wiping across it like that, it doesn't. You're not compressing it at all, right? So it's like what did you do to like slow that down a little bit and like?
No, so all I got him to really do was feel like he extended his spine a little bit in the late backswing. So I was okay with pressure going right, staying in a little bit of flexion, but then extending the pelvis and extending the torso a little bit, so it kind of recentered him late.
Gotcha.
So he would recenter late, and then he would really emphasize sort of some downward and leftward pressure into the ball of his left foot. And while he was doing that was the mechanism that started to keep his lead arm in more. And then right off the bat, the path was pretty zeroed out. He was excited because he was shallower into the ball. He was less left. He had a little bit more dynamic loft with his irons, and he could hit the ball higher. And then he could also hit a little bit of a draw.
I was going to say that. So that was just simply body pivot, like that changed the club and the arms. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, 100%.
Interesting.
So a little bit of, if you think about three forces that we're trying to manage in the golf swing, the vertical force out of the ground, the rotational force, and then there's the lateral motion.
Right.
Those three things, you're going to typically trade one for the other. So if I increase the lateral force in his golf swing, I'm going to be diminishing some of the rotational force. So when you're maxing out rotational force, man, your hand path is just following your body.
Yes.
That lead arm's coming off the chest because that chest is flying open. And so to slow. I'm never going to tell someone to not turn and not rotate fast, but I'm going to have them start blending a little bit more lateral motion, which will slow down that ratio that the lead arm is shifting out.
Interesting. So what are some of the drills or any, like, how do you train that, right? So I'm big on sort of deep practice, right? Doing it slowly, kind of feeling it, doing some like off-speed stuff. How do you train your players to make a change like that? That's a pretty massive change.
Yeah, it is. Mirror work. You can use tools like Swing Catalyst, show them the pressure trace when they do it one way and show them it when they do it another way. With Victor, it was a lot of mirror work, a lot of video work, from that face-on frame. He could see the late extension versus when he turned and forward bend, his head would be moving really far behind the ball. He's a super smart guy, so somebody like that, he understands this information on a pretty high level, like almost on a level where he could just be a teacher if he wanted to. Yeah. And so, obviously, when you're that physically gifted, you can start to put the pieces together pretty darn quickly.
Yeah. Okay, so fast forward now. He's playing unbelievable. I mean, I know he had a little struggle there last day at the BMW with some left balls off the tee.
Yeah.
But how do you, like, when you're on tour now, like, what are some of your cues and feels that you guys do during the week? Because, I mean, obviously you're not reinventing the wheel out there, but I'm sure there's a lot of, I mean, we'll get into the coaching piece, but I think a lot of it is, like, for you, like, reminding him, all right, here's what our feels are, and getting feedback from him. How does he, like, give that back to you?
So he's a challenge, to be honest, because he's a bit of a tinkerer. And there's conceptual framework where Victor Hovland hits the golf ball the best that he's capable of hitting it. And when he's doing his thing, the irons are flush lasers with not much curve. He can shape it both ways, and then he can hit his long stuff off the ground pretty high. So keeping these guys sort of in that window of optimal performance is really hard to do. And the reason I say that is because when you look at a normal tour player, you'll see they'll go in like spurts. They'll play great, amazing golf for like 2 months, and then they'll have a slump, and then they'll come back up, and then they'll have a slump. And it's simply because they get away from the things that make them great. And the challenging part for that is sometimes these changes are happening subconsciously. Like you go play, if Victor warms up on a range where there is right to left wind 4 days in a row, by the fourth day he's slicing the golf ball because he's literally just holding the face open in the range to make the ball go where he wants it to go.
Yeah, product of the environment.
Yeah, and then vice versa, left to right wind. He starts shifting the arm out to hit pulls up into the left to right wind. And so you go out on the course, you're hitting pull hooks. And so that stuff, these guys practice and they hit a lot of golf balls. And sometimes they're hitting a lot of balls on ranges into the wind or across winds, and they'll develop some poor habits. Or I've seen this a lot too as well. They'll be asked to change equipment. They'll be asked to try this new driver that came out, this new 3-wood, or these new irons or whatever. And these guys are so good they can adapt to whatever you're hitting, whatever you hand them. And so sometimes that adaptation is getting away from their natural ingredients in their golf swing. And so that's part of the equation. And then they might try another ball. That's this one spinning more or less. So there's all these little environmental things that are causing them to sort of alter their best playing state.
Yeah.
And so, like, I'm big on documentation, man. I'm filming a lot. I'm collecting a lot of TrackMan data. I am measuring all my guys in 3D when they're playing good and when they're playing bad. So I have these sort of breadcrumb trail here to go back and be like, dude, you won last November. This is what you were doing. You won the November before that. That's what you were doing. You went on this streak right here where you won 4 times in 6 tournaments. This is what we were doing. And so sometimes it's just constantly reminding them of what their ingredients are.
Yeah, you have to have that data to kind of convince them because they get so wrapped up in their feels, right? I mean, it's
100%.
I've seen it. Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah, good. Yeah, and that's kind of that's the stuff behind the scenes right there that we don't get, right? It's just like, and that's not understanding forces and torques. That's understanding your player, right? And that's understanding the guy in front of you that you spent time with and are invested in, right? It's like, how much input do you get? Like when Victor goes, I'm about ready to put this driver in play at the first day. Like, is he going to listen to you? Go, dude, that's not a good idea. Like, I don't care what the numbers say. Like, you need to go with your gamer and let's get after it.
Yeah, 100%. You know, I've squashed many driver testing session on a Tuesday afternoon at a big tournament, you know. And so, I don't know, I've kind of conditioned these guys a little bit to know, to build in some safeguards there around their equipment and, you know, around too much tinkering, especially during the season.
Yeah.
In the off season, man, go for it. From right after the Tour Championship, go try all the stuff you want to try, and you know, we'll put a plan together to get better. And that's generally, you know, what I'm working on is looking at the data. How do we get a little bit better here? And then obviously when you're climbing in the world rankings inside the top 10, that's getting smaller and smaller. And then sometimes the answer is not go try to do something to play better. It's how long can you sustain what you're doing?
Yeah, that's
right now.
That's a key. Yep.
And you know, we went from, I think Victor was around 36 in the world when we started working together, and he went as high as number 3. Mm-hmm. And you know, I think he's a perennial top 10 player. And you know, when he's within his framework, there's not many people in the world better than him at golf.
Yeah, there's no doubt. So talented. So talk about the speed gain. Like, what did you guys do? Did you do any like stack speed training, or was there some kind of
deal
that you guys worked on?
Yeah. Well, the first thing was we added a tiny bit of link to the driver. I think he was playing a 44 3/4 inch driver, and so we went to 45.5, and then we tested all the way up to like 46.5. And we ended up coming back down because he didn't swing those clubs any faster. And so, look, the cool thing was he was able to add some speed with just lengthening out the driver, and didn't lose any accuracy. So that was an automatic win. But then we got into the technical pieces of how to train speed, and sometimes that's just asking people to swing faster. So. Yeah. You know, neurologically, there's got to be a ramp up there where, you know, you're asking yourself to move quicker, to move more dynamically, to trust the fact that you can still hit it in the center of the face when you're doing this. But the biggest thing from a technique standpoint was building some speed into the backswing. You know, he was famous for this go up to the top, double clutch pump swing that everybody was posting on Instagram and all this cool stuff. I was like, dude, this is robbing you of massive club head speed. There's no dynamic change of direction. There's no stretch short cycle happening here. You're pretty much, you know, killing all that. So, when he made a normal backswing, it was a little bit slower and deliberate. Big turn, but it was slower and deliberate. So I got him to speed that up. I got him to speed up the takeaway. I got him to do a little premature pressure over his left foot and then shift to the right quicker. So I started to get his center of pressure trace moving a lot more rapidly from lead foot to trail foot to lead foot.
Okay, like Z trace.
Yeah. And then I got him to push back a little bit more out of the ground on the downswing feel, out of that lead leg. So it was speeding up the backswing, changing directions quicker, and then pushing back out of the ground a little bit more violently.
So I know Sasha's got his swing on his software, and he's documented that he has the lowest rate of closure of the face. I'm sure you already know this.
Yeah.
Right? So it's interesting. When he gets off, and it sounds like it's more of a path issue, is his face more stable than anybody you've ever worked with? Or does that...
Oh, yeah. It's not even close.
Yeah. It seems like it would be a good recipe. The way
I've only got one other player that has a club face that moves like Victor's moves from basically waist high to waist high. And there's some commonalities in what they do in terms of their amount of forward bend, amount of side bend, and amount of... Are we still good?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
my
yeah.
screen froze, and I'm like, wait a minute. I don't
No,
see
you're
myself.
good.
Okay.
Yeah, you're good.
Okay. So there's there's a few commonalities there in the amount of how their body bends and tilts and rotates, but also how their lead arm through impact bends and flexes. And so, that's a component to Victor's swing that it doesn't get talked about a lot. And it's because he's in so much forward bend through the golf ball that he's learned to bend that left arm to shallow the club. But there's a huge club face stabilizing effect happening right there. And the other player that I coach that has the club move like that does kind of the same thing. So it's nothing that I've ever...
Who's that?
Max Grazerman.
Oh, yeah, Max, up and coming star.
He plays on the Corn Ferry Tour, and he's actually here right now in Memphis, so doing some work. But
awesome.
I mean, he can absolutely hit it.
Yeah, I've seen him on your Instagram. Really, really cool swing. So the next player let's talk about is Aaron Wise, right? He's probably I would guess your longest student, because I know you coached him when he was in high school and then up through college, and that has to be very, very rewarding for. I mean, I know that would be for me. Like I coached Henry Shemp up through, when he went to Stanford, and like those kind of players really mean a lot because you've seen them since they were like little. Like talk a little bit about Aaron and like where you see his game and some of the things that you guys work on. Yeah,
Aaron's super talented. When he came to me as a junior golfer, getting ready to go to Oregon, I knew he was special, and he had this sort of it factor to where he didn't travel a lot as a junior golfer and play in the biggest of tournaments, but when he got in, I learned really quickly that when he got in contention, he won. Like he closed the deal out, and when he got on a roll making birdies, it just like never stopped. And so he won at every level from obviously high school and college. He won NCAAs.
Yep.
Went to Canada to the Mackenzie Tour, won there. Then went to the Corn Ferry Tour and won there. So, and then he came out and was a 2018 Rookie of the Year on the PGA Tour, winning his rookie year. So he just knows how to win. He just knows how to get it done. When he gets in the hunt and gets in contention and the cameras are on you, it doesn't faze him. So he's a special character because we went through something his second season on tour that sort of, I feel like sort of shaped him into the player that he is right now. And he's top 35, 40 in the world right now, something like that.
Yep.
One of the few guys that made the Tour Championship this year without winning. So statistically, his best season on tour this year. But, he won as a rookie. And then he comes out that sophomore season, and after you win and you go to the Tour Championship and all these things, you're now in all these big tournaments. And so, we go from playing the John Deeres and the Vegases and the Sanderson Farms to playing Memorial, Bay Hill, just these big boy tough golf courses, every major, these WGCs, like the best fields on the hardest golf courses. And man, it just kicked his ass. He was like, I can't hit the ball good enough to play these golf courses. My iron game is not good enough to play. You're sitting here, you're looking at Rory and you're looking at Rahm and you're looking at these world-class ball strikers and DJ at the time, and you're like, man, I can't hit that shot.
So this is what he's telling you? Like,
yes.
More of a self-belief. Like
he's like, man, I'm going to this golf course.
It's amazing.
You put me at Palm Springs where I've got 6 wedges in my hand, 7 wedges in my hand around. I'm going to light this place up.
Yeah.
I go over here to Memorial and I'm wearing my 5-iron out on every hole. And he's like, I can't hit these. I can't hit these clubs the way that I need to hit them to be the best player that I want to be. And so he's like, man, we got some work to do in my golf swing.
Oh, jeez.
It's like, wait a minute, we were just the Rookie of the Year over here.
Yeah.
And now we're going to blow this golf swing up and, try to evolve it.
How did you handle that conversation? That response?
I mean, I agreed with him. I knew that his ceiling is much higher than where he was at that time, and so.
So what did you
felt
see,
like-
and what did you guys do? Like to go in deeper? Into
Yeah,
the
so
technique?
classic Aaron Wise sort of swing fault would be in transition, internal rotation of his trail shoulder, sort of pulling the hand path straight down, which then causes him to have to early extend, kind of stand up, and really just give it a lot of right hand, through the golf ball. So very timing based. The tricky part about it was he really could drive the ball incredible doing that. I mean,
That's
when he was a
surprising.
rookie, he might have been the best driver of the ball on tour. Literally, he was bombing it over 300 and hitting like 68% of his fairways. It was absurd. And so I was like, wow, okay, if we go down this road of trying to get better hand pass geometry, trying to get the club to shallow, trying to get the trail arm to work a little bit more externally, trying to get more right bend in there. That's a lot of shit that we're going to try to tackle here. And then what's going to be the ramifications on the driver?
Yeah.
Are we going to be able to get this thing in the air? Who knows, And so we just started. Literally a sophomore season, probably into his third year, was a grind trying to get there. And then at the end of his third season, it really started to click from an iron perspective. And then this past year, I believe it's his fourth season, where, I haven't even looked at I didn't look at his year-ending stats, but I know that he was top 50 in every category.
Wow.
Yes. And
And I know putting was a big part of it. I know you guys,
Yes.
you had some consulting help there, even though you're a good
100%.
putting coach, which I think kudos to you. I know he's using a long putter.
He used a long putter in college, and I think he actually won with it, and then went away from it for whatever reason. I think some of that was, vanity. I don't want to be walking around the PGA Tour with a long putter sticking out of my bag.
Understandable.
But, he putted well his rookie season, so there was no problems, And then went into a spiral in that sort of second, third season with the putter, and it was a lot of tinkering and trying new putters and things of that nature. And then finally we got with Stephen Sweeney and got him on a good solid path for, understanding his technique, using the long putter, understanding the ball roll and all those things, using Quintec and what that felt like and looked like. He got very disciplined again with his aim point reads, and he really turned it around. And the putting, this was the best ball striking year he's ever had, but the putting coming around is what allowed him to contend and really get to the Tour Championship like he did.
Yeah. Super talented kid. I think he's sky's the limit for him.
Yeah, he really doesn't have any weaknesses in his game. He's very, very well rounded.
So you got him shallowed out, got him
bending over a little bit more, got his right arm a little bit more external, and his face is pretty stable going around the corner now.
The favorite golf swing that you work with is Davis Riley. That for me, I think it's just aesthetically pleasing. Yeah, we all have preferences, right?
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about your guys' relationship and what you're working on with him, and he had a pretty darn good year in this last probably 12 months. He had contention a few times, and I think he's just destined to be great.
Yeah, so we've been working together for a few years now. He came to me toward the end of his first season on the Korn Ferry Tour. He won twice that season very early in that first season, and he was unlucky in the fact he was one of those COVID victims to where they had to spend 2 seasons on the Korn Ferry Tour. So it was kind of a waste of a year for him. But when he came to me, there was a lot in transition. There was a lot of hip slide. There was a lot of tilting back with the shoulder staying closed, and he was hitting some big sweepers from right to left. He could really curve the ball right to left. So kind of led to some poor contact issues. Kind of led to some high right misses and some overdraws. And his goal was to really just kind of tighten his ball flight up. And so we are working on changing the hand path a little bit in the backswing.
From
Davis
what to
was
what?
From very, very upright, because he would get his arms super high, and then he would just throw in a whole bunch of right side bend
Okay.
to try to shallow it out. And when I started to lower his arm plane, tinkering with lowering his arm plane in his backswing, he just naturally felt like he could turn with a lot less side bend, a lot more level through the ball. Not really turning level, but that's how he describes the feel.
Yeah.
And instantly the starting line moved from way to the right to tighter to the right. So his stock shot's a little tiny draw, but he really can cut the ball on command now. So
With a lower arm plane.
100%.
Yeah, that's the cool thing is like you don't know, right? I mean, until you sort of try some stuff. You got obviously he's getting connected better, feels more rotary. Now you can get probably his swing feeling more left, where you think it would actually be more of a draw bias piece.
Well, so doing some screenings with him, I noticed that the way that he moved did not match up with how he was swinging the club. Davis has a ton of flexibility, and he moves in a rotary facet at a level that I've never even seen before. I mean, he can turn his hips 60 degrees on the backswing and get them 40 degrees open at impact.
Wow.
So when you think about a lower arm plane, that needs to be supported with more rotation. And it's something that he really naturally does well. So for me, it was like, okay, that piece of the puzzle has been kind of out of order. And he's just so good with his hands throughout his career. He's been able to first of all, he's a phenomenal athlete, so he can hit it far. He's very well-rounded in the game. He can chip and putt, and he's smart, doesn't throw shots away. So you're going to win tournaments in college and, on the Korn Ferry Tour just because you can do those kind of things. But he's a player that, his entire team sees him as like a top 10 player in the world. And he works at it like that. Of all my players, he's probably the most organized and structured.
Oh, wow.
And I mean, down to like the minute of what we're doing on a daily basis at a PGA Tour event is like planned out to the minute. So super efficient, doesn't sit there all day trying to figure out a way to waste 8 hours at the golf course. He gets in there, gets his work done, and goes and recovers. So it's like a 10-year veteran.
Yeah, sounds like it.
Watching him play golf. And so he's working on a very, very specific things in his swing. If you want to still call it that, we've been doing the same thing for a year now. So we're just trying to get better and better at doing that one thing.
So tell us what that is, and that's an important thing for even the average golfers out there. That I'm teaching a lot of member golfers, and like, well, gosh, look, you told me this the last time, or why am I still doing this the third lesson? I'm like, talk to a tour player, right? Their tendencies are still there from when they were a junior golfer or in college or whatever. They're still trying to push themselves away from those tendencies. It's like they don't understand the learning process. So speak a little bit about that. I think it's important.
Yeah, so if I'm going to geek it up here.
Yes, please.
From the face-on view with Davis, when you watched him, the center of his pelvis, when he because he could turn so much, would work back to the target prematurely in the backswing. There was literally zero hip sway away from the target. And so when his pelvis worked back too fast toward the target, his upper body would go into forward bend in late backswing, and then he would get trapped with a lot of right side bend coming down. And so he played from underneath, played with using a lot of forearm rotation through the ball to try to square the club face up. So I exposed him to 3D, and I'm like, look, here's what, a good player's, here's how far a good player's pelvis is swaying in the golf swing. And he's like, oh, wow, okay. So, you take that information, you dumb it down, and I'm like, Davis, on the backswing, I want you to unweight your left foot a little bit. I want you to get some of the pressure out of your left foot, and so he starts swaying the pelvis a little bit more to the right. What does that do? That puts him in a little bit more left bend near the top of the backswing with some extension. So when he transitions, he's not so quick into right bend. He's moving towards right bend because you want to be doing that in a good golf swing, but he's not getting there so fast that he's underneath. So the club, if you will, is more on plane coming down.
Right.
And it now matches up. His feels are he swings his hands much more to the left through the ball than he did before. Now he's still producing a tiny little draw pattern as a stock shot, but he can also cut the ball pretty easily too now.
Yeah.
So he's got more shots. He's got one of the best. He's worked ridiculously diligent about his wedge game in the last year and a half, and he's got one of the best wedge games on tour. Putting, I think he's a solid PGA Tour putter. He's got to get a little bit better around the greens, and that's the challenge this season, especially early in this fall series, where we're going to have some. We're going to play a week and then take a week off, and play a week and take a week off. So there's going to be some time to practice and work on some technique, and then go test it at tournaments. So that's that's kind of where we're at.
Do you guys sit down like end of the year and like do that kind of planning going
100%.
forward? I'm sure every
So
player's a little different.
Yeah, so we have a team call with the caddy and the agent and me and everybody involved, and like, here's our goals, and this is what we achieved last year, and here's where we can get better, and this is the roadmap of how we're going to do that.
It's awesome. All right, so I've done my homework, and I know you very well. It's like there's always that discussion of, we've mentioned matchups, as we can talk about geometry, but the question is, does the club influence the body, or does the body influence the club? And you've mentioned a lot about the body influencing the club today. Like, what do you think? Or is it peer or student exception, right? So it's like depends on the player. Like, what do you think? What are your thoughts on that? Or has it changed over the years?
Oh, it's definitely changed, and I think that my philosophy on it has changed. I believe wholeheartedly the club influences the body.
I'm with you
We
there.
use the term center of mass all the time.
Yep.
When we close our eyes and grip a club and we move that thing around, we're feeling that mass center move. And so when we swing a club, we're feeling that mass center move, and we respond to that. And the reason why I know that to be true is because I watch people whip the club behind them and then rotate their shoulder internally to stand the shaft up. Yeah. And not one of my guys has ever went and practiced internally rotating their shoulder, but they do it every single time. So I know that they're responding to something. You put a faulty grip on there and twist the face open at the top, and you hit one that slices off to the right. The very next swing, they're going to figure out how to shift their hand path out, how to turn more, how to do something to correct that starting line and that curvature because of that faulty face angle on that golf club. So I believe that the club golfers start out with a concept of how they want to move their body, and then shit hits the fan. That center of mass gets out of position, and then they just start responding to it.
Yes.
So if you understand some of those relationships, then you can sort of reverse engineer how the golfer needs to move their body differently to move the club differently. Yeah.
Yeah. Carl Morris always says it the best, is like, your body will organize itself around the club. I love that statement, because I see it more like, I'm teaching a few high level guys, but the majority of my players are club golfers, right? Mm-hmm. And they're all trying to turn, they're all trying to move their body a certain way that they see the pros doing. And then the club is, completely out of whack, right? And I'm like, look, learn how to use your hands and arms first. Learn what the club feels like to move in space. And I can promise you, you will turn plenty. And they don't get it, right? It just like, it doesn't resonate with the average golfer, because they're like, oh, I got to, turn this and turn that. And I just think that's so brilliant, because and that's why I was curious about what you did with Victor. I'm like, how much did you direct his hands and arms to shallow the club, and knowing he's going to turn? Like, the kid's crazy aggressive right through the ball.
Yep. So there's a couple things that I would never tinker with Victor, and that would be how his hands and arms are moving in a golf swing. The
non-negotiables.
Yes, I've changed his body to slightly influence how his hands and arms are moving, but I will never directly say, you can't flex, you can't curl your left wrist under the shaft when you take it away and flex your wrist like that. You can't internally rotate your shoulder and stand the shaft up and across the line. Those pieces are in his golfing DNA. Those are the things that make him the player that he is.
Yeah. So here's a question. Like when because I've, working with, tour players and whatnot, it's like they can, whether it's their pattern, their natural pattern, they're so talented that they can like shift the baseline so quickly if they had to, right? Like even though he was swinging 6 to the left, if you told him, hey, hit a big hook or hit a big draw, could he have done it? But would it have been manufactured, or was it difficult for him to do when you first saw him?
No, he couldn't do it. He was aiming 30 yards right at his target.
Yeah, so he was struggling
still,
with, yeah.
Okay. That still creeps in today because his concept is, geez, I know if I put this TrackMan down, I need my path to be to the right, right? But so he would aim to the right and he would swing and his path would still be 2 left. And he'd pull his hair out. Like, how come I'm aiming 30 yards right, how can my path be 2 left? Well, it's because your lead arm is shooting out in transition. Well, why is your lead arm shooting out, right? Like, so there's this whole domino effect. There's these layers to the onion you have to peel back and be like, okay, this is the root cause of why your arm is out. You don't need to aim to the right to draw the ball. You need to change the geometry in your golf swing just a little bit. Yeah,
because his shaft looks so steep coming down sometimes. I think when he's trying to like shape it left or right, right, and that kind of probably is moving back towards his old pattern.
Yeah, when he's hitting this little 3/4 like chippy cut 7-iron, he'll kick that center of mass out a little bit and steepen that shaft, and he hates it. And I'll show him like, dude, you don't have to do that. Like, you can hit that same shot, that same flight, this way. The ball position's got to be here, the baseline's got to be here, and you got to feel this through the ball, and then boom, he'll do it. And so, it's there's a lot of genius in what these guys do, and as outliers. But when they're trying to build a pattern that works every day over an extended period of time, it's tricky to keep them in that little window. It really is. And
I think that's the genius in what you do, right? That's the coaching piece, is being able to talk them off the ledge.
A lot of people are like, like I get shit from people a lot of times where they're like, dude, how hard can it be coaching Victor Hovland? I'm like, bro, you come hang out with this guy for like 3 or 4 days in a row and hear all the crazy shit he's talking about and wanting to try to do. You'd be wanting to pull this little hair that I have, you'd be pulling that out.
Yeah.
And some of his ideas are wild. Literally.
I believe it. Yeah.
So they're all the same though. All these elite level players are the ones that want to keep like pushing their ceiling higher and higher. I mean, man, they find creative ways to try to do that.
Yeah, and a lot of time it's to their detriment, right? I mean, I'm good friends with John Graham. It's teaching putting out there, and it's the same way. He's like, it's like a lot of these guys they think a lot like your 15 handicapper, which is listening to a lot of stuff, right? So it's our job or your job to kind of be the funnel. Like, dude, this is not the way we need to go. My saying is always, don't let better get in the way of best. Right? For the high level players, is like, dude, just 1%. Like, relax. Like you said, you do what you're doing. If you did what you were doing now, 10 years from now, you're going to be better. You're probably going to reach your goals. But they're all that Tiger Woods mentality of like, I got to change something drastically to get to the next level. It's insane.
But it's hard to do that because the more success you have, the more success you want.
Yeah. And,
I look at a guy like Victor, and I have to remind him all the time, like, man, you won 5 times in 2 years. We did pretty good. So if my math is correct, over the next 10 years, we're going to win a lot of golf tournaments if we keep doing like the same thing here.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's not all roses and rainbows on teaching on tour, right?
Yeah, no, it's definitely it's massively overrated.
Oh man. All right, so let's shift gears a little bit. We've got a couple of questions. I reached out on Twitter and Instagram from some of our friends and fellow coaches for you. And this is a good one. This is kind of like leads into what we just talked about, which is what I would call your superpower, right? It's the difference between teaching and coaching. Steve Moore, you remember Steve?
Yeah.
My young Padawan from Ireland.
Dude, he's got some great info.
Unbelievable. He's a superstar. So he said, what does Jeff feel like his greatest attribute is, firstly as a coach and secondly as an instructor? Like,
man, that is a tough. I guess my greatest attribute is the relationship that I build with these players, sort of the bond, the feeling that I'm sort of in there in the struggle with them. I believe, and I've said this a million times, that the relationship between the player and coach is probably more important than the information that they're
there you
getting.
go. Yep.
And so, I've worked with a lot of these guys that I have for a very long time because of the relationship piece, not necessarily because I'm like some swing guru or
right.
I've got this incredible information. You know, you're the only guru, but
that's right.
Know,
don't you forget.
So, it's mostly it's like you build a level of trust with them.
100%.
And so when things are going crappy and they're playing bad, they know that you're still working hard and you're trying to figure it out, and they have confidence that you're gonna figure it out, and then you're gonna be able to help them get back on the right track. It's like you're a security blanket for them or something like that. So I think my biggest skill is, or the biggest thing that makes me who I am, is that bond or that relationship that I build with those players.
Yeah, and to piggyback on that, and because I talk so much on this podcast about the EQ, right? And that's the relationship building, the bedside manner, the attention to detail, the understanding the body language, all the stuff that we do that has nothing to do with teaching golf. It's like, where do you feel like that came from? Was it your parents? Was it something you learned coming up through the ranks? I mean, anything you can point to say, this is what created that skill for me.
Man, I don't know. I think it's just, gosh, that's a really tough question to answer. I don't really know that I have the answer to that. I would say that my background has always been being around people. If I think back to all the different jobs I've had, like in college and high school and all the, throughout my whole life, it was really in like a service role where I was serving others. And so like, I think that role fits me well. And I think that's essentially where it stems from.
Yeah, I think that's a great answer, because what I've sufficed from that, because I think about it all the time, because I think that's something I'm pretty good at and why I've been successful, is building relationships is basically taking the ego out of yourself and then being a servant to others, right? So that's, I mean, if you can sort of have that mentality, and I wasn't always like that. I think I was very selfish and probably egotistical as a younger teacher, thinking that I was probably better than what I was. But once I figured that out and like, hey, we're here to help other people, we're in the service business, I think that flipped the switch for me. And I feel like that's probably, what you're trying to say there, which is that's what it's all about. Regardless of the level of instruction that you're giving, right? That's why you've been able to hold on to your players as long as you do, right? Because I mean, we get fired all the time. It's like, oh yeah, it's just like you've got to have the record for probably having the guys the longest, so far. So I think that's
awesome. I've been fired multiple times, so it's it's part of the business, and it's gonna happen, and you just keep moving forward and you keep trying to get better, and you keep trying to help your players as much as you can.
That's right. Okay, here's another question from Twitter from Greeny34. What did he used to teach that he no longer does, and why? I think that's a great question.
Gosh, I would say that, I'll use short game in this example right here. My full swing teaching has evolved a lot, but it's been mostly because of data collection and technology and measuring things. But philosophically, I would say in short game, I grew up, learning to hit short game shots, playing them very low to the ground, moving the ball really fast, playing, ball back, handle forward, a lot of flexion in my wrist, a lot of sort of shaft lean and handle drag through the ball. And so, why I don't teach that way anymore is because, hey, again, data collection, going out and measuring some great chippers and some great pitchers of the ball, and then looking at different segments in their body and say, wow, this is not what I thought they were doing. They're utilizing the bounce. They're creating friction and spin in ways that I didn't know that they were doing, and this is how the body's moving to produce that. So I would say my philosophical approach on short game literally has done like a 180 in probably the last, 7 or 8 years. Yeah. And look, there's a ton of golf pros out there that have, guys like James Ridyard who put just incredible information out there and shares that with everybody, because he's not only helping golfers and players, but he's also helping other coaches. And so, I credit him because he's a guy that went and did a lot of research and did a lot of measuring and put it out there for everybody, and can demonstrate it on an incredibly high level, and can also explain not only what he's doing, like this is the difference for me is I think there's a lot of great players that can hit certain shots and they have no clue how they're doing it.
Right.
And then you take a guy like James who can hit great shots and he can explain exactly how he's doing it and how you can do it.
Yeah, that you stole my response there, because as soon as you were saying that, like James has been the biggest influence in my short game teaching and is taking it to a whole nother level with his certification and him spending time with me and my son. And like, it's it's unbelievable, right? It's like, yeah, that would have been, if I was on the other side of the mic, that would have been my answer too. Is like, I used to teach this stuff that's like crap. Like, I don't know what I was doing, right? But until you can measure it, and then you start to go, wow, this is actually legit. Yeah, James is the man for sure.
Yeah.
All right, so let's give some advice to the young coaches, right? So, I mean, I know you've had kind of an unusual path, but you've got some people working for you now. Like, what advice are you giving young coaches that want to be better at coaching? Like, what certifications, what path do you want them to come on to get to the highest level?
Yeah, I would say first and foremost, and this might be the toughest thing because, when you're starting out coaching, you might not be making a ton of money. You might be just doing whatever it takes to be in the industry. But number one, do not be afraid to invest in yourself, whether that be with technology, buying a TrackMan, a pressure plate, whatever. Don't be afraid to go shadow and watch other coaches teach. Go invest in these certifications. Just go make an investment in yourself. Even if it might create a financial crunch early in your career, you're going to make that up tenfold once you develop skill as a coach and you really start to help players, because your lesson book is going to be packed from sun up to sundown when the word gets around like, wow, this guy can really help people.
Mm-hmm. What do you think was the biggest thing for you coming up? I know you mentioned some of your mentors, but what was the biggest break that you got, you think? I guess a better question would be like, when did the light bulb go on to think I can really be great at this, right? Because you're an elite instructor right now. Like, was there a time where you go, I'm pretty damn good at this? Like, when was that time? Do you remember?
Yeah, so I would say from the first year I was on tour to about the fourth year I was on tour. So I would say from, let's call it 2011 to 2015, or 2015. I probably taught 40 PGA Tour players at that time. And, when you're a new, rookie coach out on tour, you don't have Rory McIlroy knocking on your door.
Did you say 40?
40.
Jesus.
40
Holy cow.
PGA Tour players.
Scott Hamilton Jr.?
Yeah, well, I mean, kind of. But the problem is the folks that are knocking on your door are really struggling, man.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
Because it's like, why are they calling you? Like, you nobody. Nobody knows who you are out here. You know, you're not picking and choosing your clients like, you know, Butch having the best players in the world, you know, knocking on his door. You've got the guy that is 127 on the money list that's about to go back to the Korn Ferry Tour knocking on your door. And so the issues that I was seeing were just drastic, you know, that got him to this level. So there's a double whammy here. Number one, I hate to use this term because these guys are the best players in the world, but they have these death moves. These moves where you're just like, you can't be doing that and hit a ball the way that you want to do it.
Yeah.
You know, just pulling down and yanking on this shaft and cupping your wrist and twisting that face open and lagging it all the way in the back of the ball. Like, you have these death moves, but then you'd also have a guy that's 38 years old that's probably made $15 million on the PGA Tour, and you're going to tell him that shit's all wrong.
Yeah.
So it's like fighting through that. So you're asking me what like told me that I was going to be good at this was I was actually able to help a bunch of those guys. And I thought in reflection, I was like, my God, I helped that dude save his card.
Yeah.
I helped extend that guy's career a few more years. Like, how in the world did we ever get that problem solved? And so, you know, that's when I started to think, man, if I actually get some dudes that can move well, we're in business here. You know, and the next thing you know, an Aaron Wise comes along, you know, a Scott Piercy.
Yeah.
You know, I spent like 6 years with Scott, and man, he was absolutely pure. And so those guys started to have more success, and then you start getting more and more talented players trying to work with you, and then that's when it kind of snowballs.
Yeah. I mean, and Piercy's got a little bit of an unusual move, right? Kind of tosses it out at the top, right? Kind of cool. Like we've talked about with DD, you know. Yeah, but the non-lag move, I think, is
you look at it at P6.
Yeah,
it's freaking Lee Trevino. I mean, that right arm is in there. He's got the lag back in there, and he's tilting and turning, and he's flushing it out of the center of the face. Like he was a dude that never practiced and could fall out of the bed and stripe it. Yes.
Wow.
I mean, every time he could just roll out to the range and stripe it, and it was just like almost a curse for him. He was so talented.
Oh my gosh! Little resurgence of what was it, a couple weeks ago? He was almost won. Kind of fell apart at the end.
Man, I thought he was going to get it done there.
I know.
It's pulling hard for him.
All right, so a couple of random questions here before we wrap up. So, if you had to do a TED Talk on a subject other than golf instruction, what would you do? What would you talk about?
Fishing.
Yes.
I mean, no question.
Let's go.
I'm like a 5 handicap fisherman, but my God, there's nothing more that I want to do. And I'm watching every video on it. I'm reading books on it. Like the same thing I kind of try to do in golf instruction. I'm hardcore into fishing. Right now, I'm mostly only bass fish because of where I'm at in Tennessee. But I want to start taking trips and going to all the, taking guided tours and going to all these different fisheries and learning how to catch different fish, and so I'm gonna geek out in the fishing arena.
Let's go. Yeah, that's I always
I need a mentor. Are you available?
I am available. Yeah, I've got a little bit more free time. Not a lot, but getting there. I just got a 90-pound tarpon about a month ago. It's the first time I've ever done that. It's a crazy experience, but in red fishing down here is different. But I'm fishing like you are in the lakes at the club. And in my neighborhood for bass, bass fishing forever.
There you go.
So, yeah, we definitely need to swap some stories there. What's your favorite pattern?
Favorite pattern in the golf swing?
No, for fishing.
Oh,
for bass fishing.
See, I don't even know what you mean by pattern. Like,
come on,
the type
plastic
of lures
worm?
that I use.
Yes.
I
thought you were a little more experienced than that.
That word pattern threw me for a loop there. So, I mean, I think you just made that shit up, but. So I've only been in Tennessee for a year. I'm itching to buy a boat. You can't really call yourself a bass fisherman if you're not fishing a big body of water with all this technology and fish finders and computer software all over your boat. You're not even really a fisherman unless you're doing that. So, I'm fishing a lot at the golf course where I work, and then the neighborhood that I live in has a huge pond as well, so I'm fishing from the bank. Here's the thing. I want to catch big fish. So, somebody told me a long time ago, you can't catch big fish unless you're using big bait, big lures, right? But I'm like, my God, every time I go use these big lures, I ain't catching anything. So I like to catch fish. So I'm using plastic worms. I will catch them like crazy on worms, on lizards,
there you go. Yeah.
on, all kinds of different creature bait. And it just, I'm starting to learn. It depends, what color you're using, depending on the clarity of the water. Is it murky that day? Is it clear that day? So, I mean, there's a lot of science in this stuff.
There is. I'll help you out with that. I've got some thoughts. So, and I see you got Victor out there fishing, which is hilarious. It's like, how about that day? Like, work with Victor Hovland and then go take him fishing.
Oh, yeah, the craziest shit was we're fishing for bass, and he accidentally hooked a bluegill in the side of the face. He pulled this thing in. I've never seen a fish hooked on the side of its body like that before. And watching him take that off the hook was like priceless.
That's awesome. All right, so I know you gotta run. Last question that everybody has to answer, and we probably need to do a second edition here. But if you had to get a message out to the world, billions of people, I always say a gigantic billboard, but now it's like, all right, if you had to get a text message or a DM out to the world, what would your message be, and why?
Wow, I didn't know we were going to go this deep.
Dude, I haven't got anywhere close in this podcast. So,
is this pertaining to golf, or is this just like a message to the world?
To the world, man. Just
oh my God,
life according to Radar Golf Pro.
Jeez, man, I guess I would say just be kind to people. There's a lot of anger and animosity in this world today. You feel it kind of everywhere you go, and it's. For me, coming back to Tennessee, it's been refreshing because even though I'm on the outskirts of Memphis, I'm in a town where it has a really small town, kind of like a small town vibe to it. Mm-hmm. And the people are so friendly, and they go out of their way to greet you and carry on conversation with you. And it's just it's a very refreshing change from a fast-paced city that I've lived in, like Las Vegas and LA and things of that nature. But my message would just be kind to each other, and and especially in like a smaller scale thing like the golf instruction business, right? When I first started this business, it was very territorial. Like, golf coaches didn't want you to watch them teach. They wouldn't let you teach a lesson on their range. It was very guarded. And now it's totally not like that anymore. People freely share information. We're doing stuff like this. When I have a question about a swing, I've got 50 guys I can call or text, and I don't really have any insecurities about, them giving me the answers, because I've done it with other people as well. And so,
right.
I have this kind of standing thing where if someone asks to come and shadow me teach, I've never turned anyone down.
Good for you.
That's an open invitation for people that are listening to this. If you're willing to hop on a plane and fly to Memphis, you can come and watch me teach as long as you want and ask all the questions you want. So that would be my billboard message.
Awesome, man. Fantastic. Yeah, and, that's the same with me. And I think it's an honor, right, to somebody would want to come and shadow you and ask questions and learn. And I think it's our obligation, right, to 100%. To move instruction along and share with them what we've learned along the, over the years. So thank you so much for your time, my man. Tell everybody how they can get a hold of you. I know just give them your handles on social so they can ask you questions and really fill your DM box.
Yeah.
I know you don't have any time for lessons, but
The easiest way to get to contact me is on Twitter and Instagram. Probably mostly Instagram, but I'm at Radar Golf Pro. I mean, most people don't know my name, Jeff Smith, but they know the name Radar Golf Pro. So you can send me a DM there if you want to contact me. And then you can find out more about my online platform at CourseKings.com. And love to hear from you guys.
Awesome, man. Thanks so much for your time. You're the best. Keep up the great work.
Thanks for having. We got to plan a fishing trip together.
Absolutely. We are going to do that.
All right, bud. Good seeing you.
Good to see you.